Hello, I'm Colleen Quinn. I'm a fellow in the Academy of Adoption and Assisted Reproduction Attorneys. I'm actually a past president and served on the board of trustees for quite a number of years. And my adoption and surrogacy law center is part of the Quinn Law Centers that I run in Richmond, Virginia. I've been in practice for 35 years. That's a long time to learn a lot about assisted reproductive technologies. We're going to talk about addressing mental health issues in these arrangements. And the first thing that folks need to be aware of is that we lawyers are not mental health counselors. Sometimes we're called a counselor of law, but that's because we can give advice on the law, but not necessarily hold people's hands through these arrangements. And it's really important that folks have access to counselors through these arrangements. So typically, the gestational carrier or surrogate, she is going to have mental health counseling and a psychological evaluation as part of the process. She can either utilize that counselor throughout the arrangement or should have access to another type of counselor through the arrangement. The intended parents, they usually come to these arrangements having suffered a number of grief and loss issues. Oftentimes they will have suffered a number of miscarriages. They may have suffered a hysterectomy. They may have had cancer, so they never got to the point of actually being able to have a pregnancy. They may have suffered other losses. And so oftentimes they will already have had some counseling with infertility specialists in that regard, but they too must undergo psychological evaluation and counseling in the process. And they also need to have access to a counselor throughout the arrangement. In addition, we also, in the contracts for these arrangements, oftentimes we'll put a requirement that everybody have access to group counseling. It's really important that everyone have that ability to work through issues. I've had cases where folks want to turn to their lawyers to deal with some of the issues that may come up. Maybe they think the carrier might be drinking alcohol, or the carrier agreed to a COVID vaccine and now she's refusing to do that. Getting the lawyers involved, we're good at arguing. We're not so good at holding hands and working things out with people all the time. So making sure that folks have access to a group counselor to work through some of those things that might come up during the arrangement is really important. While we lawyers who practice in this area are sympathetic to some of the issues going on, and we're aware of those issues, and we can draft language that might address those issues in contracts, we ourselves are not licensed professional mental health counselors. And I even put in my retainer agreement that I'm not a medical provider, I'm not a mental health professional, and that those providers will necessarily need to be available throughout these arrangements to make sure that they go smoothly. Anyway, I hope that has been helpful to you with regard to how mental health professionals factor into surrogacy arrangements. Thank you so much.